All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm Dr. Leni Liebenberg, and this is the PhD Support Group meeting. It's the Tuesday session of the Doctoral Academy. I am very happy to be hosting this very particular session today because I am a huge fan of inspirational stories and feel-good news, and especially when the stories come from within the PhD community. And today we are joined by three brilliant fellows at SANTE. SANTE is the Sub-Saharan African Network for TB and HIV Excellence. And during the PhD journeys, these students, these fellows, they work together to spearhead a remarkable initiative that's aimed at improving the representation of women in science. And they do this specifically through a campaign to understand and promote mental health awareness. And I think this discussion is a wonderful way for us to round up our sessions over the past couple of weeks that were focused on improving mental health for professional success. So before I hand over to the team for a round of introductions and a presentation and discussion, I'd just like to have another reminder that the PhD support group meetings are really very interactive, pretty informal, even though we ask participants to please mute themselves during presentations, and we prefer cameras to be switched off during presentations, merely for bandwidth reasons. We still very much encourage interaction and engagement. This is a safe and uplifting space. So please feel free to place any comments, any questions in the chat box. Use your reaction icons to express support or whatever you're feeling during the presentation. You're also welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to address the group specifically. So, right, with all that out of the way, please join me in welcoming Yanga Mdleleni, Upasana Rampal, and Makobu Kimani. Hope everyone is here online. Welcome, SANTE Fellows. Feel free to introduce yourselves, and we look forward to hearing more about the campaign, yourselves, the reason for the campaign, and to enjoy being inspired by these efforts during your PhD degrees. So thank you, all of you, for your time. The floor is yours. Would you like to share, Yanga?
Thank you, Lenine. Yes, I'm going to share just now.
Okay.
But just to give a little background and maybe a brief intro, my name is Yanga Mdleleni. Yes, as Lenine has already introduced, I worked with Makobu and Upasana on this project. Maybe I wanted us to do a brief mental health check before we start, just to check where everyone is at mentally. I think that will be a good start for all of us, since this is focused on mental health. So maybe, Lenine, I'll start with you. I have a mental health check here. This is a scale of 1 to 7, just to check in. I know there's been a lot going on. Students, supervisors, everyone has been affected by the pandemic. So before we even start, because our work really focuses on mental health, I wanted us to just do a brief mental health check-in. On a scale of 1 to 7, you can pick any, no reasons given, just a person to say how they are feeling, and everyone else who's a participant can also raise their hand, or just, as you said, it's an interactive session. Other people can even write on the chat box. So what's your scale from 1 to 7? I'll start with you, Lenny. I'll put you on the spot.
I think it depends. I guess in my professional life, I'm okay. In my personal life, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Everything could always be better.
Okay. So your scale is, you are okay, 5.
4.
Okay, you're a 4. I see there are people in the chat. Tamlin says she's a 4 as well. Tandeka is a 4. Sandra is a 3. Most people are a 3. That's quite interesting. And a 3 is they're good. 6, someone is struggling. 5, Nomusa, I'm not okay. That's quite relatable to a lot of people, especially considering where the world is at the moment. 6, only because if I use 7, I have nowhere else to go when things get worse. I'm so sorry to hear that. And thank you for sharing, Viokazi. And someone else is on 1. That is lovely. 4, there's 6. There's a lot of 4s and 3s. Someone else is okay. Samuel, I see you are okay. So I would also choose 4 because I think 4 is quite neutral. One thing, Lenine, from your answer, which is part of the reason why we also did this work, you said something about when I asked the question, you in your professional life and in your personal life, and it's as if there's a distinction, and we often have to we always have to make this distinction when we speak of mental health generally. I still see the points in the chats. People are still responding. A lot of people are still on 6 and 4. But one thing that made us do this work, I again, back to the point about having different aspects and different faces to our final being. Yes, we were doing our PhDs at the time. We've transitioned to different parts of our careers, including teaching and other things, but we exist as individuals, and there are different roles that we play holistically around who we are. So when a person asks, how are you doing? The first response is to check which younger are you referring to? Are you referring to the professional younger? Are you referring to the personal younger? And it's always easy to separate those two. But it's always, I think one thing that made us do the project was that we recognize that individuals exist and we're multifaceted. And so there are different struggles that we experience, yet we still have to appear and show up holistically in our different faces, if I can put it that way. We have to show up holistically in our professional lives. We have to show up holistically in our personal lives. Even though one area does affect the other, somehow we have to find a distinction between the two. So a brief personal and specific reason for starting the project. I was traveling. So for most people, it's quite common, especially in Africa, it's quite common that we live in the city and our origin or our families come from the rural areas. So this is quite common. I'm sure a lot of people in this chat can relate to that. So I was traveling, having stayed in Durban. I was traveling for a funeral of my sister in the Eastern Cape, which is the village. And I was doing my PhD at the time, and it was stressful. And I remember hearing the news on a Wednesday, and I had to kind of put it aside because I was going to have a presentation on Thursday. So I had to put it aside. And it's like taking a bag of grief. That's something very shocking, and it's news that's so personal and so difficult to bear, and putting it aside so I can focus on my professional self and deliver the work I needed to deliver and be done. Then afterwards, then put on the personal cap and now start grieving. And I had to travel for the weekend and go to the funeral in the Eastern Cape. And I remember driving back on Sunday and telling myself that I have another presentation on Monday and I cannot bring the same stress, the same emotions, and the same pain and grief. I need to kind of leave that here as I'm now moving back to my professional self. And that's just one of many incidences. And I got back and somehow I put that part aside and managed to continue and do the presentation and continue with my professional life. And a part of me later on, as I was reflecting, was how many people and how many times do we need to separate our lives? And especially for women, there's a lot that's expected for women. There's a lot that is, and when you become emotional, women at times are said to be too emotional. So then they can't fully be themselves. Women can't fully be themselves and show up as they should, as holistically as who they are. We sometimes have to show less emotion so we can appear more professional, which is one of the many challenges that women face, not only in academia, not only in the workspace, but generally in our existence. So I reached out to my colleagues. I remember I reached out to Makobu. Makobu is Dr. Kimani. He's also part of the project and he's based in Kenya. I reached out to him and I told him, and at the time we used to speak a lot about our PhD journeys, our struggles together. And so when I reached out to him, we spoke about supervision, we spoke about different issues that we're facing in our PhD journeys. And I was just like, let's do this, let's conceptualize this idea. So the bigger project, the idea of the bigger project was to focus on mental health, improving the mental health, not just of students, but of people in academia, understanding that, yes, at the time we were full-time students. I have transitioned also to become a lecturer. So as a person who's fully in the system, we needed to find a way to improve the mental health and well-being of people who are in academia, not just students, but everyone else, supervisors, everyone who's holistically involved in the process. So we reached out to Upasna as well, and we all agreed that we agreed to work on this concept. There was a Sunday grant that had come up that was focusing on gender equity and inclusion in science. So we conceptualized this particular study that we are going to be focusing on today. The study was entitled Understanding and Improving the Mental Health and Well-Being of Female PhD Students here in Kenya and in South Africa. Upasna and I are based in South Africa. Makobu is based in Kenya. So that was initially what we wanted to do. So we focused on women, who focused on female PhD students as the core for gender equity, because we know a lot of women, science generally, the STEM field generally is historically male dominated. And once we see it when you are in first year, when you're in second year, or any undergraduate course, you'd find that there are a lot of women in these science classes, but very few of them do make it to the end. Very few of them do graduate. And we've seen in other studies as well, people who are in PhDs, there's a high enrollment of females in the PhD program, but very few do graduate. So one of the struggles, besides the systemic pressures, besides the personal pressures, the home life, others being mothers, others having to divide themselves into various roles and suffer from burnout and mental health issues, mental health was definitely one of the key contributors to why a lot of women do not stay in academia. Very few females do complete their PhDs. A lot of them drop out because of a lot of pressures that we experience. And so we focused on females, just to look at the mental health and the well-being overall in these two countries. So what we did, we looked at standardized tools to look at these specific themes. We looked at depression. What are the symptoms of depression? How do you tell when you are depressed? How do you tell when you are anxious? And we also looked at unhealthy coping mechanisms. How do people cope with depression and anxiety and stress? We looked at alcohol, harmful alcohol use and substance abuse. We looked at post-traumatic stress, not just being directed to your PhD journey, also focusing and acknowledging that there are different factors that contribute to your well-being. Your past experiences, anything that causes stress can, at a time when you are still living your life, you can ignore certain things until you are faced with a bit more stress, which we know postgraduate studies cause. A lot of people who are studying, who are doing their PhDs, do get stressed, and sometimes certain things become triggers that will then contribute to the post-traumatic stress that you're already experiencing. So some certain things become triggers. So we focused on that. We looked at whether people work in conducive work environments. Are they being supported? Do they feel that if they're struggling, they get the support they need? How are the relationships between students and their supervisors? And so these are the themes that we focused on. But essentially, we had a workshop. We had a workshop where we addressed these. We first had a survey to kind of address, to kind of assess where people were at mentally, how they were struggling, what they were struggling with, which areas were areas of concern. Then we went and had a workshop with a mental health professional from Kenya. We had a virtual workshop. So the mental health professional, she was amazing. She broke down what mental health is, the signs and symptoms of depression, how to do a mental health check, which is similar to what we just did, but most of it was generally to promote awareness, self-awareness, and for you to be able to at some point pause and check on yourself, even if it's during the day when you're busy, you're writing your thesis, just take a moment and just check, how am I doing in the middle of your day? So she was giving pointers like that. It was really helpful. And also following up on the problems that we had picked up from the survey. So those were addressed in the workshop. We also had e-posters that focused on more awareness of mental health and how to cope with mental struggles. And so we promoted those via social media. We posted them on Twitter, we posted on Instagram, posted on Facebook platforms, printed some out, and had them posted all over campus and different campuses, both in our South African campuses, in our Sante sites, as well as in Kenya. So we're trying to not make this like a full-on scientific presentation, but to kind of give you a brief of how our work happened and this part of the project, or this phase of the project, which was mostly our data collection phase. So we had 50% of the correspondents in the survey and participants were from South Africa. 50% of them were from South Africa, 43% were from Kenya, and 42% of them reported feelings of hopelessness and depression most of the time, which was such a concern because 42% is quite a high number. And 1 in 4 experienced anxiety every day. So 1 in 4 people would have some form of anxiety attack or panic. 21% reported self-assessed harmful alcohol use. 12% had no access to mental health support, which was a serious concern. 10% felt disconnected from their supervisors. They felt that they couldn't speak to their supervisors. If they had issues, they couldn't consult, and they didn't have a good relationship with them. 50% were actively looking for new opportunities, which meant that people spent majority of their time away from their PhD work in order to try and find other opportunities or other work environments where they would feel supported. So that definitely ate up on their productivity time. So here we just have a few visual representations of the different areas that we focused on. Makobu, I don't know if any of you guys want to continue, then I can just share this part and you can continue just summing up the findings. Otherwise, I could continue with that. But this is essentially the parts that I had shared, that over 40% of the participants, 42% were from Kenya, 48% were from South Africa, and then 8.6% were from other. So we also had participants who were also female PhD students. Most of them were of African origin or descent, but were based in different parts of the world. Others were in Canada, others were in the US. So that's what the 8.6 other meant. So that's essentially where our participants were from. Sorry, I'm trying to move. Okay, there we go. So when we looked at depression and anxiety, we found that very few people had no issues, but we saw that a high number of people suffered from depression. And we also checked on, we did an average of maybe how many times do you feel this way? So the first question was, in the last 2 weeks, have you been feeling bad about yourself, or that you're a failure, or you have let yourself down or your family down in any way? So we found that like 24% of the people felt that way for like several days. There were 22% who felt that they had been a failure, they were disappointed in themselves, they weren't good enough, which is quite sad, because when you are doing your PhD, you want to focus on your work. You want to be as confident in yourself, because if you're not confident in yourself or you have any struggles, it also blocks the way you are able to translate your words into paper. You can't really write well because you are just suffering and dealing with so much. So that was definitely a cause for concern. We also noted a high percentage of people who were feeling anxious. 26% would have some form of anxiety. In the last 2 weeks we were doing the survey, they would have some form of anxiety attack more than 3 times in that space of 2 weeks. Others would have it almost every day. They would have some form of panic or anxious or anxiety attack. They would feel anxious most of the time. Others, 25% of them said they nearly felt that way every day. They felt nearly every day they would feel some form of anxiety attack or depression. So these were the high numbers that we were quite concerned about. Then in terms of harmful substance use, people were not having healthy coping mechanisms. A lot of people don't know how to cope with feelings of loneliness, feelings of stress and anxiety. So they have very unhealthy coping mechanism. And if you look at this diagram here, 86% of the people reported to use some form of substance, to abuse substance in order to feel better and to cope with their struggles. So we then looked at the association with substance use, what substance and how often they were using those. So the stress from work has led to other mental health concerns such as anxiety and depression. And we found that 6% of 48% of those people felt like that's what they were struggling with. I mean, 32%, so that's 48 in the rating. So 32% of people felt that all their stress was coming from work. There was majority of the stress they were feeling or the way they felt about themselves was because of their work, the pressure they felt from work, which was really, really concerning. And it's quite common also, we noted. And then what substance addiction are you concerned about? This one was quite shocking. A lot of people reported food and others, gambling, sex, internet, shopping, excessive shopping. And we interestingly had participants that also were concerned about tobacco use. Alcohol was 21.4%, marijuana was 7.1%. 7.1% were non-prescription or over-the-counter pain medicines so that people would feel better. And we had someone who reported to have been using cocaine in order to deal with their stress. And this was so heartbreaking and so concerning because these are people who are doing their PhDs. These are females who are doing their PhDs, but because of their stresses, they find a lot of unhealthy ways of coping. So that was definitely a cause for concern. And then we went on to supervisor relationships. That's another theme that we focused on. We asked questions such as, does your supervisor provide access to mental health? A lot of people agreed. So the question was phrased as, my supervisor provides access to mental health training and support. A lot of people, so some people disagreed. So we had 38% of people who felt that their supervisors were not offering the support they needed for their mental struggles. And honestly, this was very heartbreaking considering that a successful PhD journey is not just for the student. The supervisor plays a big role, and the relationship between the student and the supervisor and those dynamics have a great deal and a great impact on how the student would succeed in their PhD journey. So for them not to feel comfortable and safe to speak about their mental health and their struggles, it was a serious cause for concern. So I don't know if there are comments. Also, people are just commenting that they are truly heartbroken. I will continue. It is actually a reality that we saw in our study. And honestly, I agree, it is quite heartbreaking. So when we then looked at continuing again with the supervisor and student dynamics and their relationships, we asked again, we asked a question and we phrased it this way: I would be comfortable speaking to my supervisor regarding my mental health concerns. And again, 18.6% of people disagreed. They said they wouldn't be comfortable we had 20%, some 20.6% of people saying, yeah, somewhat, I would agree that I would be comfortable, but also they weren't sure. Only 25% agreed that they would be comfortable speaking to their supervisors. And only 12.4% said they strongly agree that they felt that they could be comfortable to speak to their supervisors about any concerns they had, which was good, but it was a very low number. And then we phrased another question. I am comfortable providing feedback to my supervisor about their performance, behavior, conduct, and support. We found that 15% of the people somewhat agreed. We found that people who strongly disagreed, there was 7.8% of them strongly disagreed that they would be comfortable in doing that. Those who agreed were only 29.1%. So people didn't feel that their relationships with their supervisors was encouraging enough for them to speak up to their supervisor, whether it's the behavior of the supervisor or the conduct that they weren't happy with, or to even comment, because it doesn't have to be all negative things. Sometimes just to give a compliment to your supervisor, applaud and say, thank you, this is going well, our relationship has improved or whatever. But people didn't feel that they had those kind of relationships with their supervisors. Honestly, that was quite a cause for concern as well. So because our project this was our data collection stage, we still continued to build on this work, and we are still going to build onto it. But some of these areas were themes that we felt going forward and moving on to the next stage of our project, we needed to focus on. Another question was, my supervisor actively encourages me to take time off when I need it. And this one, only 4 people agreed, only 4 people totally disagreed, and 24%, only 24% strongly agreed, and just about 39% of the participants agreed that their supervisors were kind enough and would encourage them to rest when they needed. And we had 4.1% that felt that they agree, and somewhat agreed was 39.7%, so that was the 9.7% that felt that they somewhat agreed, not entirely sure and comfortable that their supervisors would give them time off. So I'm just gonna skim through the results so we can go into the discussion. Another part was, I spent time actively looking for new positions. So here we saw that this one was very sad because 19.5% of people disagreed. They said that they don't spend time looking for other opportunities, which was a good thing. It meant that they were comfortable where they were, but 19.5% of them strongly agreed. It means within our cohort, 19.5% of our participants felt that they spent a lot of time away from their work, not being productive, but focusing on ways or looking for other opportunities because they are not happy where they are. They need better opportunities. 32.5% agreed, and they also felt strongly that they are always trying to find other opportunities, so they don't really focus a lot on their work because of the pressures, whether it's the relationships with their supervisor or just the work environment itself wasn't healthy enough for them. So Upasna, do you want me to continue and just do the whole thing and we just—
I can take over whenever you're ready.
Yes, please do. Thanks. I'll just first look at the comments and we can read them maybe at the end when we start the discussion. So you can just go ahead and continue from here.
Okay.
Tell me when to move to the next slide.
I will. Okay, so these are actually quotes that we obtained during the survey. And I just want to read them out because they're actually quite emotionally, you know, it reaches out to you. I mean, you know, Yanga gave a very nice example about the emotions that she went through and the turmoil that it caused in her life and stuff like that. So I personally, I think there was a lot of aspects where I was completely in touch with. And I think this one quote that stands out here: the workplace seems toxic. It thrives in putting people down if they don't meet preconceived ideas of what a person in your caliber should have achieved. It also drives undercutting and power play, so you can't pursue research peacefully. That statement on its own, oh my God, it raises so much of factors, I think, as a female, that can be summed up into that one quote. Other people also mentioned that it's a toxic environment. It's not supportive at all on the mental health issues. We also got a quote that it is unsupportive. Here, there are no available mental health support services. If they exist, they are not communicated properly. So, I mean, with regards to the last quote, I'm not sure if it was from which site exactly, because our survey was completely anonymized. So we can't really say. And that allowed us to have a more open platform for more honest answers. Yeah, I mean, I'm just leaving this quote here. You guys read it, and I'm gonna just give you quickly a brief summary and plan on our ongoing and future initiatives. But just take the slide in and feel free to discuss any sort of emotion that comes through when we open the panel up for discussion. I'm sure everybody has a lot to say. Yeah, next slide.
Okay, my cursor doesn't want to move. It's stuck on this one. Maybe it's very important.
It is. It gave everyone time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, as Yanga, I think emphasized that this was a very passionate project that we took on. It was a two-phase project. The first phase was the data collection phase, that in which we sent out a hi. Please mute. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll just mute.
And yeah, so yeah, it was the first phase was data collection, in which we received some amazing data. This led actually to us providing a lot of insight into the issues at hand. It was based on the findings, we actually plan to generate phase 2 of our project, which focused on area discussions, webinars, workshops, as well as the posters, which Yanga also explained earlier in this presentation. And we addressed some of the major findings that came out from the data collected. Phase 2 is ongoing, allows us to develop more precise interventions, as well as delving into other focus areas as well. So these allowed us to provide insight in identifying crucial mental health support gaps in the overall scheme of addressing gender equity and ensuring diversity within academia and at the workplace. Our overall aim basically was, from inception of our project, was to influence change and overall experience of female PhD students during the academic journey, and to retain female students in academia especially, as well as influencing policy change. So these were our major aims. This initiative is ongoing and it's extremely important. And I don't want to speak too much. I'd rather have us discuss this more. So on that note, I just want to end this section by sharing some words of encouragement and support, and say that what we achieve and accomplish today is an add-on on top of what we accomplished yesterday. And we just need to keep moving forward. And remember, and even if you have to look at yourself in the mirror every day and tell yourself this, you are doing your best. And that's all that matters, and that's all that's important. So based on that, Yanga, please change the slide.
Okay. So this part was some of the posters. So maybe you can just have a look at what the posters were focusing on. We can leave this part on. I don't know, Lenine, if you had, because what we thought we could maybe have a discussion we can have a discussion and some of the comments, maybe just to open it up to how do people cope with their unique challenges in academia. And because what I've noticed from my own personal journey, from being a student and being a full-time student and having to deal with a lot of challenges in the PhD journey and having to try and find support for myself and reach out to people that were also as supportive and people who felt that this was an area of concern that needed to be addressed. We collaborated and we worked on this. How are other people doing it? And I feel that now I see it. I mean, the challenges, I like what Upasana said about we build on. Our experiences can never be as isolated incidences. They build on, they make us who we are each and every day. We improve, or the previous experiences, it kind of lingers on and can also inhibit your greatness in the current moment. So I see it, and I think it really helps to find support, but I just wanted us maybe to speak about how everyone else is feeling and how everyone else feels that how are you coping? What are your coping mechanisms? What are the challenges you are facing in academia? Not just as a student, because I know some of you, I can even see in the discussion, there are some that are not students. So I would like for others to just maybe open it up. How is everyone feeling and how are you coping?
Thanks, Yanga. I mean, now is a wonderful time to open up that discussion. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been focusing on specifically on mental health, and many of us have been reflecting on that very question. How are you coping? Do you need any additional coping strategies? For the people who are based at UKZN, the student support services have been on hand speaking to us about what sort of support they offer. And you know, what you mentioned earlier about toxic environments, that resonated with me, and I'm sure it resonated with many people on this platform. And it also ties in quite nicely with a recent session that the student support services held recently on bullying in the workplace. And I think it's so very important to raise awareness about what constitutes bullying, because sometimes bullies aren't even aware that they're doing it and really are just creating this really horrible environment for everyone around them. And it just turns out to be an unproductive space and adds to the challenge of you getting through your PhD or getting through your workday in the first place. So sorry, that was just an aside, considering Upasana put those pictures about the toxic environment on, and I'll try to remember I need to speak about that. Sari, let's get back to anyone else wanting to add any comment about how they are coping. If there are any major challenges that you'd like to discuss. Asi Veloshni has posted something in the chat box. She says, whenever I feel anxious and being overwhelmed, I take a slow mag. I sleep better, I become calmer and relaxed and able to positively realign my goals. She takes a chill pill. Nice one.
That's a good one.
What I really liked, Yanga, was how this all started. It's so very relatable. You found a way, you found a way to engage with a wider audience. I mean, you started with, this is what I'm struggling. You acknowledge that you're struggling. This is what I'm struggling with. And then you discussed it with others who are along the same journey as you. And I guess this is where we are right now in this meeting. So many people focused on professional development, having various challenges, but often similar challenges, and it's an opportunity to discuss them. And that's what you did. You acknowledged the problem affecting women in PhD, and you decided to do something about it, not just speak. Yes, speaking can be therapeutic, it does help, but to do something about it can help so many more people. So you guys gathered the facts, you identified the importance of promoting self-awareness of mental health, and you spread the word. So this, to me, this was such a very positive way of coping with the challenges of the PhD world, and not just for you, but for a community of PhD students, and not only women. I see there's a male involved in your trio over here as well. So that was wonderful to see. Thanks, Makobu.
Yeah, thank you, Lenine. I don't know if Makobu has anything to say, but because we initially have... Oh, okay, I thought someone was speaking. I was saying, because the actual bigger project was focused on mental health, we also do recognize that men also struggle, and there's a shift now to promote mental health and openness in these conversations, a lot for women and inclusion for women in STEM, which is fantastic, which is absolutely important. But men also struggle, men in academia also struggle, students also struggle, supervisors and people in the system also struggle, and they don't feel that they have that platform. And honestly, if there are issues between a supervisor and a student, because of the power dynamics, the shift is always to focus on the student and try and offer support for the student, and oftentimes blame the supervisor, which means that the supervisor now is left on the other side with no formal support, or they don't feel heard, or it can even be the other way around. The student can feel that the supervisor is being favored by the system. So the initial idea behind the actual project and the ongoing projects is to just focus on mental health in academia holistically, looking at the system, looking at the partners at play, the students, the supervisors, and how the environment itself offers that kind of support. So Makobu was fantastic. We worked with him so well, and he is a definite champion in gender equity, and he's been so great also with fighting for women's rights and all these things. So we saw it in our work, we saw it in our study. We also see it as we develop the project further. But it was really great, and it was such a personal project for all of us, having gone through that. And some of the things to take on is that the experiences we have as students, because people don't stay students forever, we transition to different roles. So some of the coping mechanisms and the support that I personally had in my PhD is the same that I have now taken on to work. And it has really helped me even engaging with students now, being on the other side. It's like, I recognize it. I recognize the struggle. Because I've been there, I understand it. So it really, really helps all of us when we start listening, and we start listening to each other, and we look at academia as a system. Everyone is playing a role, whether you're a student at the time or you're a supervisor, but everyone is also playing a role. So it should be holistic. The support should definitely be holistic. So I don't know if we should still continue looking at the chats. I see someone is saying very important conversation, Vuyagazi, very important conversation. A big thanks to the team. What form of support were you able to provide for participants you identified as needing help or intervention? So we had various meetings. We had mental health professionals for debriefing. Once we first had the workshop where people were identifying their struggles, where people were even taught to be aware, a bit more aware on how to know when they're struggling, what to do when they're struggling, and who to speak to, or how to build that form of support for themselves. So we had that in our initial workshop. We also shared details on mental health support services that are available, whether you are in the South African institutions or whether you are in Kenya. We shared those. Also, I think some of us are also involved in other mental health projects. I am also involved. I work with the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, on a mental health project that focuses, sorry, I have birds in my roof. So I am also involved in a mental health project that focuses on improving the mental health and well-being of women, of mothers, of the LGBTQI community. So that is also with the SADC. We have meetings, support group meetings like this one on the second Thursday of the month. Those are virtual. We can share details also. I know besides UKZN having some support, UKZN also works closely with SADC. So there's also a lot of different support groups going around in communities, in different communities, especially for those who are based in KZN. So we did offer those, and those people that were really struggling, those who were suicidal, those who were using substance abuse, were also referred, those who were abusing substance in order to cope, were also referred to some form of mental health professionals for further support. So I don't know, Lenini, if we should continue. There's quite a bit going on in the chats.
Yeah, there is. I see, actually, I've got an anonymous message. She'd just like to place a comment. She says, sometimes you do not realize you're sinking, and it takes someone close to you to say, hey, I think you need to take some time out, and availing themselves for a good vent. So you need that sort of support and community. In my case, it was my supervisor who noticed first that I was struggling and recommended therapy. And only when I had my first session with a psychologist did I realize just how much I am drained mentally. So this person, her supervisor, was actually quite supportive and proactive, noticing that things are not really okay before she did, and directed her to where she could go for support. So that seems to be a good relationship to have had for Anonymous. I see Andre mentions the point about men was also quite important, but men also struggle, and many times men hide it. I wonder if anybody else would like to comment on that one.
Yeah.
No, we all women-centric today.
Is Makobu here? He was struggling with connection. Are you here, Makobu? Do you have anything maybe to add? If your connection is better.
No, I think
He's still struggling.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I think on that note, I mean, based on what Andre said, oh my God, guys, the struggle is real. The struggle is real. Academics are hard. And I think an important thing that we also need to consider is that, like I think Yanga or I think Lanine said, is that sometimes it's difficult for us to even acknowledge that we are going through something hard, or even accept that we are going through something mentally, and that we may have an issue and we need to seek help. And that is why it's so important to have support and to have somebody or some people that are there for you, to help you or to talk. And venting, I mean, venting is one of the most amazing tools I think I personally have discovered for myself. You don't need feedback. Sometimes you just want to talk about it and get it out of your system, and you feel so much better. And mentally, you get like this, like a cleanse. It's a mental cleanse, you know? And I mean, we have hard days and we have good days. But the thing is, the people that are around you, the support that you have around you is so important as well. And I think, I mean, if anybody, if you're going to take a take-home message from this as well, it's that support is available, support is there. And we are here, you know, you're not alone in this. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I have quite a few questions about this. So, I mean, you guys are busy doing your PhD. Makobo is a medical doctor as well, also doing his PhD, if I'm not mistaken.
He's done.
Oh, you finished. Okay. I mean, this must have been such a lot of work. I mean, how much extra effort was involved in this? I mean, did you detract from your academic focus for this important initiative?
Yes, we did to a bit. I think also, I just want to point out something. I mean, Makobu is not here right now, but
No,
he, I think, was,
back,
oh,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
one
I
of
think,
those days my network failed, my computer restarted. You know,
oh, no.
anything that could go wrong actually did. So sorry,
It's
guys.
fine.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think Makobu was our saving grace majority of the time, because Yanga and I, well, mostly myself, I know. Yanga's very calm. I used to panic and I used to stress out and I used to get really bad anxiety. And Makobu was like, oh my God, he calmed us. He always checked on us to make sure if we were okay. And, you know, mentally, if the mental health project wasn't mentally draining us, he always made sure we were okay. And the mere fact that he did that aspect, I think, pulled us through this entire thing, because looking at the data that we got as well was also emotionally taxing. So, you know, dealing with having to put everything together, and your PhD, which sometimes makes you question your existence, you know, everything all happening life. So I think, yeah, I would actually like to take this opportunity and thank Makobu for his support and his guidance and being our rock during that time. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on that, Lenine, I think your question was so important, because then we had to think about our PhD work and our PhD experience, and without feeling like we were doing too much or removing ourselves from the PhD work that we need to be doing and wasting time doing other things. What helped was to for myself, it really helped to look at it as part of my PhD journey, that in order for me to do well in the work I'm doing, I need to address the areas that I'm struggling with. And that not only being a personal project, that it could help someone else. And whenever we came across some of the quotes that were difficult or feedback that was difficult from another participant, it felt like, oh, that's relatable. Someone else is struggling. And a lot of the because I know the PhD journey itself is quite isolating most of the time. You focus on the work so much that you don't spend time with the people that are in your life. You don't have much time to hang out with your friends or your family. So a lot of the struggles that people go through in their personal journeys in their PhD, they feel like it's only them. So having gone through the project and worked with other people and seen how most people and other people were struggling with similar things, that also made it less lonely. It made the journey less stressful, less lonely, and more relatable. And so the project didn't feel like a separate project from the actual PhD work. I looked at it as just part of my PhD journey. So it didn't really feel like something that took away time. And as Upasana said, we created a WhatsApp group and we would check on each other. So it also made us build our own support system as we were working on the project.
Oh, it seems like such a wonderful coping mechanism, especially when the project itself can be super stressful, never mind your PhD, but going through the comments from participants, I can't even imagine the sort of debriefing that is required for something like that. Could I ask another, and I'm dominating these conversations, I'm so sorry. I'm just so curious about it. I mean, how is working on this project impacted your career plan? I know, Yanga, you touched on it a bit. Now you've experienced the challenges of a student, and you've transitioned into becoming a lecturer, and now, I mean, you're experiencing a different sort of challenge, but you can get both sides of the coin. So how has this experience focusing on mental health for students impacted your career now as you're moving on?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. For me, having experienced the stress of doing a PhD and the loss, I mean, I had a lot of loss in my family. I lost about 6 people during my PhD. So that grief, the stress, I changed supervisors. I felt at some point like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's so frustrating. There's something wrong with me. So all that stress that came with the PhD itself, and having to work through that, when I look at it now, I feel like everything that I struggled with was something I needed to learn, so that when I'm on the other side and dealing with students, I can offer that support coming from a place where I fully understand. When a student is struggling, I have struggled, I understand what they need, I understand the kind of support they need. I even now in my style of teaching, I focus a lot on mental health and well-being. I work closely with the mental health, because I'm based in the School of Life Sciences. I work a lot closely with the mental health support services there, where I'm constantly referring students who have struggles. It really has helped me deal with students differently and have a more compassionate and empathetic approach in how I deal with people in general. I honestly feel that the more we learn and our eyes are opened, it helps us to offer support to someone else, and to offer service, that kind of service, to be of service to others and help them improve in their own journeys. So I think the project itself and the journey and the struggles of the PhD there are a lot. They can be a lot if someone doesn't have the support, but not everyone has to go through that. So those who've gone through it, those who have overcame, must also give support to others to also avoid some students falling onto the same trap, especially the part about not resting. I think it's such a common thing in academia that you must work all day and all night, rest a few hours. Productivity is tied to how long you work. If you are tired in academia, you are doing well. And if you are resting, you are lazy. So there are a lot of things that we now have to challenge being in the system that we're in. That has really helped me, even having gone through the project itself and worked with other people. I've changed my way of thinking. I've changed the way I do it. And it's worse when you are dealing with students that are in their first years who are only coming into the system. As someone who's gone through all of these struggles, you also kind of help guide them and offer a different alternative as to, hey, you don't have to be stressed. You can find support. You don't have to do it on your own. You can learn to collaborate early, learn to find your own support structure, work with other people well, build your own team, because you are definitely going to need support. This process can be isolating. So a lot of it I've taken on, and it has kind of helped me relate to students and other people better.
Oh, good. I'm so thankful for this program. It seems like there's so many benefits of the campaign that you guys have experienced, and I guess for women to experience as well. It's so important to be able to retain, I guess, anybody in science, not just women, but especially women. And I applaud you for your campaign, the three of you, and your funders. I know we've got 1 minute left. Does anybody want to ask an additional question? I've been so captivated. I'm sorry. Okay, so is there a way for anybody to contact you three for any additional information? Perhaps you could, if you'd like to, pop your contact details in the chat box, so I can forward them if you wouldn't mind. For anybody who has not seen the posters, I'm happy to forward those around as well. I understand that this is an ongoing project, and it would really be wonderful for it to be extended to a point where I guess we could come up with targeted recommendations for additional support to retain women in science. So that's just me running my mouth. But thank you again for such a wonderful campaign. Thank you for sharing it with us today. You raised so many important points about awareness of mental health, how important that is. Thank you for sharing your journey as well. It's been such an eye-opener. And I just thank you for being here, being so candid about it as well. to the rest of the participants, next week on the PhD support group meeting, we will be hosting Lewin Liebenberg. Oh goodness, that used to be her name. Lewin Woodley. Lewin Woodley will be back, focusing on accountability and how important accountability is in promoting success. It's a goodie. And we'll see you for that one at 3:30 next Tuesday. This session has been recorded and will be made available on the UKZN YouTube site. And thank you so much again, Upasana Rampal, Yanga Mndleleni, and Makobu Kumani. Thank you for being here and for sharing with us. Right, all that's left for me to say is goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
I'm sorry I couldn't be more productive today. Sorry, guys.
It's fine, Makobu. You were here in every slide.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.